Welcome back to another episode of Built to Lead Women in Manufactured Housing. Today we have an amazing guest with us, and welcome. I'm so excited to have you on here, Claudia. I am going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Marissa. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everything that you and Caesar do for all of us. My name is Claudia Musgrave. I have been working here at Baird's for about shy of 5 years, almost a full 5 years.
Wow.
It's been an incredible ride. But of course, above work, I'm a mother of three. I have two additional, not, I shouldn't say stepchildren because they are children. They're still, to our heart. But I've got one of them that lives in our home that's going to college. So four kids all together under our roof. So aside from being a operations manager at Baird's, I'm an operations manager at home with
Yes.
four important lives.
You're the CEO at home.
I know, right?
And you said you've been with Baird for 5 years?
Yes, ma'am. This August.
Wow, that is awesome. And have you been in the same role? Is this the role you started in?
No. So if I tell you the wildest ride, this was so, as you know, my faith is very prevalent and foremost.
Yes.
So um it was a situation where I've done the career world.
Yes.
I've done, I was divorced in my mid 40s.
Mhm.
Um, Met my husband. We got married. We started, new house, new life. Kids were still little, so I was thinking, maybe this time around, let's do it right. Let's not so much worry about career. Let's not so much worry about finances. If God makes it available and we can budget under one income, let's
Right.
do this. Um, so we were doing that as the kids got, more into their school activities and freed up my time. I was working as a recruiter for a company that did, locally recruiting for companies. So that was a very fun part-time job that allowed me the flexibility to work and be mom.
Wow.
Um, and COVID hit.
Oh, yes.
So when COVID shut us all down,
Yes.
the company was like, "Hey, let's keep, interviewing people and hiring people." And I said, "But nobody's really taking on new employees." And I said,
Right.
"That's false hopes." And I said, "Somebody who needs a job today or
That's
within a
right.
week." And I said, "So I don't feel comfortable, giving false hopes." And the owner of the company was like, "Hey, Claudia, we never know. This might not last and we might be reopened." And I said, "Okay, so let's, you know, we don't have an office. We do have to interview people. We have to do drug testing. We have to do all these things." I said, "Where?
Right.
We're not going. We're shut down." So that put a hiatus to that situation. And of course, kids were home. So for once, I got to do the one thing that I feared the most, which was I'm not a teacher, and you forget that as a mom, you are.
Yeah.
So, but educationally, I was like, this is going to be, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess up my kids for the rest of their life. And I actually found it to be the most amazing time that we had. Um, we did our schoolwork, then applied what they learned to real life. So
Yes.
Emma was little and she was like, she would think math is just dumb and reading is just dumb. And I said, "Well, let's make your favorite cookies." And she's like, "Okay." And we would submit these videos to school. And I said, "So read your ingredients, gather your ingredients."
I love
Um,
it.
and then she would, and I said, "So we need a whole cup or a fourth or a third or whatever."
Yes.
And I said, "There's your math.
There's
There's your
math. Yep.
application of math." And I said, "And then when you put it all together, your reading, your comprehension, your math, here's the outcome. Batch of cookies." And she was so excited. science. We would go outside and I said, man, I've got to pull weeds. I'm like, hey, this is different environments, but guess what? When you pull this weed and you pull it all, here's the stem, here's the leaf, here's the
Yep.
root. So we were
I
doing that.
love it.
Yeah, and we were doing that, and in that I would say, hey, also think about, and I said, you see this beautiful flower, and that is you. And I said, and you have, bloomed, and God's got you in the center of his garden. I said, so he comes in and picks all the weeds, which is sin and the world and the distractions, and then it allows you to have a clean ground to grow. And so it was our neighbor that came out to me. She goes, Claudia, I promise I'm not stalking you. She goes, but I'm listening to what you're saying to the kids, and it's amazing how you're still on top of your on task of what you need to do. They are learning, and then you include how God puts it all together. She goes, it was amazing.
I
So,
love that. Wow.
so
But were you ever
but
a teacher?
no,
Wow. Maybe you missed your
no,
calling,
I
Claudia.
know. I know. After that, I felt it. I was like, oh man, I said, this was fun. So then I was looking, the company that I worked for doing the recruiting, once COVID kind of schools went back to normal, they kept threatening here in Florida. I don't know if it was the same everywhere else, but here they're like, oh, we won't be open long. We're doing everything on computers because we're going to send the kids back home. We will
Right.
not be open very long. And I was like, gosh, I said, if I go back and we go back to recruiting and we go back to the same scenario, I don't, it doesn't sit well with my heart.
Right.
So
Right.
I told the company and I said, with all this going on, I said, I feel like it's just best if we just at this point, you need help, I'm here. But
Right.
let's just, I have to do what feels right.
That's
So
right.
I saw an ad for Baird's, and they were looking for a lot person to do the cleaning of the houses.
Wow. Okay.
So I was like, huh. I said, it's part-time. It's between the hours of me dropping the kids off. I drop them off at school, and Baird's in my house is less than a mile away. So
Yes.
the school was in between my home and Baird's. So I was like, so I drop them off, I pick them
Mm.
up, and we're home. And I said, this is fantastic. So that's how I started cleaning houses, cleaning the
Wow.
lot, doing the things that needed to be done. Now, the operations manager back then, she's like, "Hey, Claudia, have you considered, sales?" And I said, "I'm like, no, ma'am." And I said, "I can't be here lengthy times and on the
Right.
weekends and doing all this stuff." And I said, "I've got, the kids were like 6 and 7 at
Uh-huh.
that
Oh,
time.
yeah. So they were little.
So I was like, no, not yet."
Right.
So through COVID, people started getting sick, and it ended up that it was just the secretary, the office administrator, and me that
Yes.
were here. And I was still working as a lot cleaner,
Uh-huh.
uh, but there was nobody else here. Everyone else was sick. So I knew the houses, I cleaned them, I understood them. So I was like, we've got people that are walking in, and I said, let's go. I said, let's do this.
Wow, Claudia,
So,
that's
so
awesome.
I started showing houses and explaining as best as I could. And, and Baird's was like, hey, you write up a deal. He goes, we'll treat it as a
As
salesperson, not as your
right.
position. I said, absolutely. So our RDO at the time, he came down to show a house to somebody. And this person was hilarious. He was in some kind of, I cannot remember if it was FBI or not, but he was supposedly in a position of with the government, and his wife was Spanish, and
Hmm.
he had been stationed in Italy, so he knew Italian. So, I mentioned, I said, well, my family is Italian, so I speak Italian, and my mom was born in Venezuela, so I also speak Spanish. And so mid-conversation, the guy just switches to Italian. So I switch back, and we're talking in Italian. So the RDO hears, and he's like, "You speak Italian?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then the wife comes up and she wants to speak Spanish. So he hears me, goes, "You speak Spanish?" He goes, "What are you doing? Cleaning the houses." And I said, "Sir, I cannot dedicate the time that it's
Right.
required. And I said, and that's not fair to the company to have somebody that cannot give their all. And I said, not that I'm not willing to give it. I said, I'm being for once very jealous about my last two babies. And I said, and I
Right.
want to be a mom. Well, that didn't last. They promoted me to sales, part-time,
Wow. See, they saw
part-time.
the value.
They did it part-time that would fit with the schedule of the kids. And then shortly after that, the operations manager had been here a while, and she's like, you'll be my replacement. I know that. So I want to start training you. And she
Wow.
did, and here I am.
Wow. That is amazing. So, what did it mean to you for people to see that in you? Did you see it in yourself?
Yes, I just, and I hate to say this, I was trying to keep it hidden because I was afraid of committing to something that I know when I give something, I give it 100%.
Yes.
And I'm like, but then what am I taking away? So I'm taking
Right.
away the time with the kids. And I
Right.
was that conflict of they're still little, they're my last. Emma's tiny. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to. I don't want to. If I don't have to, I don't
Yeah.
want to. And then I was like, okay, forget it. They were once they were in middle school, I was like, it is what it is. And I said, and I've prayed about it and I prayed about it and prayed about it. And I was like, God, you're leading me here for a reason. So just shut me up and let me do whatever it is that you need me to
Right.
do.
Let me do your will. Yes.
Yep.
I
So,
love it. That is a beautiful story. You
isn't it a
know,
wild story?
but that's beautiful. I mean, you just went with it, I mean, what are the chances that there is this opportunity at Baird Homes with your home here, the school here, Baird's right in the middle.
Yep.
And here you are
Yep.
and
And like
just
I said,
thriving.
I was somewhere else, and when it started not feeling right, I was like, normally I like to hang on, like no, like let's make this work. And I was like, no, Claudia, you've done that for too long. And I said, when it doesn't feel right, stop.
Yeah.
Let God guide you. And I said,
Yes.
trembling, I always say, trembling knees and a courageous heart, knowing who's behind me and who's in front of me. And I said, I never am afraid to say that, hey, I do it scared, but I do it.
That is awesome. I am trying to become better at that. I'm trying to do
Hard.
that saying, what do they say? Let go and let God,
Like,
right?
mhm.
And so I try and tell myself that because, Caesar's really good about that. Caesar gets something in his head and that's it. He doesn't, there's no details, there's no planning. It's just, I'm
It's
doing
just,
it. I don't know
yep,
how we're going to get there, right? He always
yep.
likes to say, we're building the plane as we go. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that someone like me, that is so scary, right? Because I'm like, okay, I want to have it all listed out. Did we do this? Okay, now we can do this. And it just doesn't work that way. And
Yep.
especially not in this industry.
And in anything in life, and that's the thing. Like my husband, he likes to have plans. He likes to know what the next
So
step
he's
is
like
going to be.
me.
Yep. And I told him, I said, and I used to be, I needed to have A, B, C, A, C1, CA2, 3. And I said, I needed to know everything. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter. And I said, if God calls you to do something, he's going to
You gotta do
provide it.
it.
He's going to
Yes,
give it. He's going to make the
yes,
way. Whether you make a mistake, whether you do it, I said, even in the wrong or in the right, there's always
yes,
an opportunity and a lesson. So I was like, I'm not. I spent too much time, as you know, fighting with God.
yes, I know. Well, it's interesting because I was scared to do a podcast, right? And I've been listening to other podcasts, and everyone's like, why not you? Why
Yeah,
not do it? Who cares if two people listen to it, but you did it? And what
yeah,
you're doing is you're doing it for yourself, not for anybody else, right? You're
yeah.
doing it because you can say, I had the courage to do it. And what's
That's it.
funny is this morning, I was sitting in the sauna and we were talking. I was talking to one of my friends that was there, and someone said, I'm not eavesdropping, but I heard that you said you had a podcast, and it sounds so interesting. What's it called? And I want to listen to it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I
Gosh.
said, look, I'm not some famous, I don't have thousands of followers, nothing like that. I'm just starting and I'm excited to do it. And I have some wonderful women that just need to be celebrated. And that's what we're doing on this podcast. And she was like, it sounds wonderful. I don't know about your industry, but I want to follow you. I was like, oh my God. It was like, okay, see, one baby step at a time. Who knows?
One step, yep. And you never know where it leads. Like I told you, I said, this is out of my comfort zone.
Yes.
But you know what? Again, if
But
if
Claudia, you have your
you asked,
story.
and if you asked, and that is where God has placed in your heart, then what who am I to stay in the way?
Well,
So
your
that's why we're
story is
here.
amazing. I mean, I didn't know that. We spoke before, right? And we went through some things. We found that we have a lot in common that we're going to get into here in just a little bit. But I didn't even know the story of how you started at Beard, and that is amazing. That is definitely inspiring. I love it. I love it. So let me ask you this. You've already been in the industry for about, you said 5 years almost, right? In
Mhm,
August.
mhm.
As a woman, we know that this industry is male dominant, right? I mean, it's all about the males and they run a lot of stuff and they make a lot of decisions in our industry. What are some challenges that you've seen, or what are some things that you would like to see changed, or something that we could do better in our industry?
Well, even whether it's industry or not, I think the male, you and I talked about this, the male mentality, you get up, you go make things happen.
Right?
But you go make things happen because you have the support of somebody behind you,
Yes.
picking up every step of the way that they're forging, everything that they're doing. And sometimes I feel like whether it's this industry, whether it's life, whether it's other jobs, they always expect a woman to perform like a man,
Right?
but still expected at home to be mom. And
Mhm.
that's the hard thing. That's why I said in the beginning, I was like, I've done this and I missed out so much with my oldest daughter and, like I got to stay home with the little ones. Um, had to. We couldn't afford to put two
Right.
two infants in
It's
daycare and go
expensive.
work.
Yeah.
So that was like, that was life changing for me, thinking, hey, my parents owned their own business. Work was very second nature to me. So, being and my dad was a pastry chef. We ran a restaurant. We did wholesale bakery. So work itself, creating business was not a problem.
Right.
But
You got that.
stopping that to be a mom, it's
Mm.
like, oh, you feel like you're not as productive. Oh, I am not valued. Oh, what I
Yes.
do is just so menial. No, it is not. It is the greatest gift that God has given us. So that's why I was so apprehensive about going like, do I want another career right now? No, I want my kids. And it worked out anyways to where now they're in high school and here I am.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's one of the things that I, I love about Baird. They're very family oriented. So
Right.
they don't expect a male and forego family. They understand, hey, kids, life, things come first, and they will not ever penalize you from, having a kid that was sick or something unexpected. You need to bring a kid to work, just say, hey, so and so will be here today. And it's not anything that it's held against you.
Right.
So I have not experienced that male domination so much,
That's great.
but I have experienced the family feel here. And
I love it.
that is amazing. That is why the love that I have for Baird is not the company, the love that I have for the family
Right.
that builds it. Because
That's a true blessing.
it is. I mean,
True blessing.
there are times when, when it's business, but there are times when business aside, I'm an only kid and you know that. And I feel like I found
Your
my two
family.
oldest brothers.
Yeah.
So, and it is, and it's like that. And you feel that love, you feel that respect, you feel that appreciation.
You
So,
know, even on our training calls that we do with you guys, right? When the whole team and even with the managers, you can feel it. You can
mhm,
feel it, right? Michael is all, he's right there, he's listening in.
Yep.
And if he doesn't agree with something, he's going to say it.
Yep.
Or if he agrees with it, he agrees with it, but he's always proceeds with caution with it, right? Kind of, how do you feel about this? What do you think? Are we, and I love that you can see it. You can see the love, you can see the respect that he has for everybody, the respect
Yep.
that y'all have for him. The
Yep.
conversations that you and I have had where you said, y'all can tease each other and send each other funny memes and stuff. That's awesome because not everybody has that.
Yep.
And so it gives you that you feel blessed, you feel grateful to come to work, and that's how it should be, right? You shouldn't just be
That's
going
that.
there to get a paycheck.
Nope.
You're building
Then
something.
it's not an experience. Then it's just blah. And
That's
not
right.
that you've got good days, you've got bad days, you've
Of
got
course.
mood days and whatever, but no,
Right.
the overall, it's a great place. Yeah, with Michael, I sent him a text once when we had the podcast, the training, and we've got all the pictures, and I said, "Oh my gosh, Michael," and I said, "It just hit me," and he's like, "What?" I said, "We look like the Brady Bunch," and I said, "And I am not Marsha."
I love it. I love it. Well, let's get into some personal stuff now.
Yeah.
Some women stuff because a lot of us women struggle, especially us moms, struggle with balance, right? And especially us that have multiple children, right? And husbands and the life. How do you balance all that, Claudia? How do you go from your job and turn it to go home to do what you have to do there?
And decompress one of these.
Yes, yes.
And I mentioned less than a mile away, so I don't have a
Yeah.
long period of time. And 98% of the time, by the time I leave here, I'm picking up a kid, so they're not far from work either. So I don't have that time that most people have, a 30-minute drive to just. So I've learned to just constant constant prayer. Constant prayer is not, sometimes it's just thank you, Lord. And here, let me get me through the next step. And I said,
Right.
because I don't want to bring a bad day that I may have had here to a kid that's excited to tell me all about the dumb that happened all day long. And in our minds, oh my gosh, like, why is this important? But it's important. It's important to you. And right now, my time is yours.
Right.
So it's something that I all I have to say is with prayer, with faith, and with the smile, I just go from one to another to another to another. And there's times I do, like, I get up in the mornings, I do my Jesus calling, a devotional, and just journal some. I was really good about doing just meditation.
Hmm.
Um, Now we haven't had, or I have not had the time to really continue. Um, but it's something that, even here, sometimes I take a break, a 15-minute break, and do just a walking exercise where I can just,
You
whatever
have to.
happens, let it go.
Yeah.
Whatever this person, we had a day that there was a client, and, you know, there's nothing that I can do that is right. Absolutely nothing. I mean, everything is going absolutely above what is expected,
Right.
but
But not
I'm
making them
just,
happy.
it's just not going to happen. So you sit there, and I'm like, you know what? I said, Lord, whatever it is. And I said, there's a lesson even in here. And I said, and the lesson is, don't get distracted, Claudia, because the enemy comes in various forms. And I
Right.
said, and this is not it. And I said, I have to keep focused right here with you. And I said, and everything else will just fall away. So,
Mhm.
and that's how I carry from here to home, to husband, husband, because he's got to unload his day too, and the kids, and now we've got the three puppies, and so
Please tell me you didn't take that fourth one.
we didn't.
Okay,
We
good.
have
Thank
not.
you. I
No,
said a prayer for you on that.
I did. I was like, Ronnie, I said four. And he's like, well, what's the difference between one, two, and four? And I said, four.
A lot.
One more. And I said, no. I said, please. So we're hoping there's a friend of ours that might pick him up. So, but
Okay. Okay, but not you. That makes me
yeah,
happy.
not
That
us.
makes me happy. That makes me happy. So for your I know for me, my downtime is like in the sauna. When I go to the sauna, I get to sit there and I do exactly what you said. I either am listening to a podcast, I am, talking to the Lord, just saying, okay, how's this day going to go? Just lead me
Yep,
down the right path. Let me have the right attitude.
that's
Let
it.
me be, the wife, the mom that I need to be once I get home. Because, yes, I've had those moments where we've had the bad days, the bad conversations, and I take it out on the wrong person.
Yep, yep,
I get upset with the kids for something that they had nothing to do
nothing.
with why I'm in the mood that I'm in.
Yep,
And it's hard because you and I both know the second you walk in the door, it's mom, 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 mom,
yep,
mom, 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 mom. I mean, I used to try to pick them up from school and I used to try to come home and get things done. And I'm like, the only person that is stressed out around here is me
yep,
because I'm trying to do too much at one time.
yep,
So when I pick them up from school now, it's like I know for until they go to bed at 8 o'clock that my time has to be devoted to them.
yep,
It's going to have to be homework, sports, dinner, whatever that time looks like, those 3 4 hours, it has to be with them.
yep.
Caesar and I have this saying that we tell each other, and it's must be present to win,
Hmm.
right? And that's not just like in a drawing or a raffle. That's in life
No, that's
too,
in life.
and I go back to that saying a lot in my head. I'm like, okay, I got to be present because Jackson, our 19-year-old, at any minute he could say, Mom, I'm out.
Yep.
I'm gonna leave. I'm moving. I'm gonna go live in the mountains because that's what he's determined to do. And
I'm coming, Jackson.
and I have to when I think about that, I want to just break down and cry and go into a little ball, right? Because I don't want my babies to leave. But the reality is I know they're gonna leave.
Yep,
And all I can do is pray that I did the best that I could as a mom and I
yep,
send them out to the world and they're going to be the best humans that they can.
that's it.
Right. And I have to pray that I was present in their life, that they
Yep.
know that mom was there and that mom will always be there. But that's not always an easy thing to think, right? Or
It is
do.
not. It is not. And that's something that I always tell myself. They were yours before they were mine. And I said, and they're mine for a season. I said, just help me be who I need it to be for them. I said, for the good, because there's plenty of for the bad that I don't want to, you know,
Yeah.
I tell the kids and I said, I work really hard. And I said, because I want you guys and not the good life. And I said, because I had an amazing life growing
Right.
up. I said, I want you to see that, hey, I'm here. No matter who comes and goes, I'm here.
You're the constant.
That's somebody that you can count on, that's somebody that you can, when you go out and you make a mistake, don't be afraid, oh, I can't tell mom.
That's right.
Be the first that calls and says, oh man, mom.
Yeah.
And
We're
that's it. And I told him, I said, I want you to win. I want you to soar. I said, Emma is, like I said, the youngest. I talk more about her because she's Miss Diva. But she's like, I am so going to Harvard. And I
I
said,
love
well,
it.
of course. And I said, they always need people that, clean floors. And she's like, Mom. And I'm like, sweetheart. And I said, I said, dream big, because if you dream for the moon and you shoot for the moon, even if you fall in the clouds, I said, you're higher than you were when you started. And I said,
Right.
but I said, little girl, if this is your dream, I said, that dream has a path. That dream has some sacrifices.
That's
That
right.
dream has some work. That dream has some changes that have to come about from within you
Hmm.
to make it. And I said,
Yep.
so that's why I do what I do. So you can see, what? It doesn't matter what life throws. It doesn't matter what, things happen. I said, Mom continues to trust and walk forward one day at a time, one step at a time. Shaking knees are sturdy. We keep on
Yeah.
going.
We do it. Yeah. That's the same here at our house. We tell our boys, you can tell us anything.
Yep.
You can, if you get yourself in trouble, you need to call us because we are going to be the ones that take care of you. We're going to be the
Yep.
ones to do whatever we can to help you get out of what you got into.
Yep.
We may not agree with you. We may be upset with you, but that doesn't mean we don't love you and
That's
we will
it.
always be here. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough, definitely, because the world is so different and there's so much to corrupt their minds. Social media, just people, just yeah, there's
Yep.
a lot out there, a
Yep.
lot of negative, and it's hard to keep them away from that sometimes.
Yep. To protect them at all cost. And
Yes,
that's
yes,
where our faith steps in and says, you know what? You, you can see what I can't. You
right.
can it's because if not, oh my gosh, I'd be a nervous breakdown every 5 seconds, especially with
I
Emma.
I
Justin
know.
Justin is pretty cool. Amanda's pretty amazing. Jack is, not that he's got it together, but he's pretty together. Emma, that one right there, and I said, and you've got the greatest potential, I said, out of everyone. I said, because she's actually launched a candle company. So
Wow,
she called it, she's done her logo, she's done her stuff. So it's Emma and Co. Candles.
I
Um,
like it.
and my ex-husband, he's like, boy, you just, you do so. He goes, I'm glad that they've got you as a mom because it doesn't matter what they do, you're always there being their biggest cheerleader. And I said, that's what we're supposed to do.
That's
I
right.
said,
That's
this is the time for them to explore and figure out, hey, this is
yes.
what I want to do or not. But this upcoming Friday, I promised her there's a local flea market. And I said, if you gather everything and you figure out, and this is business, what did this cost you? What did this
Right.
cost you? If you had to pay yourself, if you had to pay yourself, somebody to sell it. And I said, figure out your costs. So this Saturday and Sunday, we will be at the local flea market, which doing this, I told you this is out of my comfort zone. And I was like, but everything that Caesar has poured into us, um, I was like, this is something that I can pour into her. So
Right.
she is doing a small mini podcast explaining why she wants to
Yay!
do what she wants to do. She wants to go live, to promote that she'll be there this weekend. And she has hustled. She's got 30 candles, which
That
doesn't
is
seem like it's a whole lot, but
awesome.
for a 13-year-old and you're during the
Yeah.
summer in between cheer practice. So she's done a lot and she's got it all. She's got the board, she figured out her price, she's got the stuff. And I'm like, hey, honey, I said, and then I told her, I said, do not be disappointed if you sell one.
No. Right.
I said, but don't be discouraged. Don't be, just, I said, let it be. And I said, and the one thing that, have you prayed over what you're doing? Have you prayed over the people that are going to get your candles? And I said, so why don't you use this as a ministry? And I said, it's candles, it's light. I said, figure out the Bible verses that have to do with light, with
This
candles.
little light of mine.
Yep. And I said, and do a little sticker on the bottom. And even if you just put the Bible verse, not the whole verse, but just the chapter in the
Uh-huh.
book. I said,
Mhm.
Emma, if God has given you a gift in a point and a purpose, then go for it, baby. So
There's no stopping you.
that's where I'll be Friday and Saturday.
I love it. See, but that's amazing. Those are the things that we do for our kids, right? And you know what, Claudia, you're the example. You're the example. She sees you, and so she's out doing it. I think you and I discussed this in our conversation where I told you Caesar and I stopped yakking at our kids and telling them, yak, 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 do this, do that. No, 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 no. We just started doing
Mhm.
and they watched us and then they started doing, right? It's the same with Jackson. Jackson has two LLCs that he has all by himself as a 19-year-old, right? He started them, I think, a year or two ago, right? And Christian, our middle one, he likes to look at the stocks. He likes to put money in stocks, and so he studies that. Sebastian's all about being an athlete in sports and watching those kind of videos and stuff. So, again, it's us just doing and them seeing it like, okay, I want to do that, right? Like whether it's us going to the gym because we go to the gym every day to work out, reading the book. Christian and I are doing a 45-day challenge right now where we have to read 2 chapters a day and journal about it, and we cut out certain foods. And so, I love it because look at you being, pouring into your daughter that way. I
Yep.
love it.
Yep. And like you said, we are the example, but when we are overwhelmed, and that's where that balance comes in. Because if you're overwhelmed, they're gonna look at it like, why do I want that? I don't
They
want to do
feel it. Yeah.
that.
I don't want to
And,
look like
and
that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like once you just let go and let God and
That's
let
right.
things flow and just calm yourself. I've seen the change in Emma, and of course, age factors in
Of
as well.
course.
But
Yeah.
but the change, especially in the last few weeks, she's so focused and so centered in doing what needs to be done, not an argument, things
Yeah.
like that. So she's it's great. It's those moments right there that you're like, I don't want to spoil it, so let me
Yeah.
just sit back and smile quietly. And I'm like,
Don't ask too many questions. Just roll with it. Yep.
just roll.
I have those days with Jackson and Christian too, where they're like all excited about doing something, and I just think, oh yeah, yeah. And I want to say a million things, but I'm like, no, just let them
No,
have their
just
time.
let them have it.
Yeah.
Like of course I was like, oh, and if we do this, and I got her little labels, and then I was like, oh, we'll print them. And then I was like, I got home and she hand wrote them in and she put, she made up names for her candles. And I was like, oh, but this would have looked so much neater if it was. And I'm like, you know what?
Gotta
Hands
let
off,
go.
Claudia. I
Yep.
said, that is amazing. And I said, that is great. I said, such great creativity. And I said, that's amazing, Emma. And I'm like, inside going like, it would have looked so much better if it was, typed versus it. And I'm like,
I
thank you,
know.
Claudia.
You
And I
you
said,
have they have to learn. They have to do,
yep.
it's we had an incident like that. I don't know if you know, but Jackson writes and produces and directs movies, right?
Oh,
Film
wow.
shorts right now. And so they just wrapped one up a couple weeks ago and they did a scene here in our house. And one of the actors was next to me, and I was like, I think y'all should do this and do this and do that. And he comes and he like taps me, and I love him to death. He's been in several of Jackson's movies. He goes, I'm sorry, I didn't know this was your movie. I was like, oh, you're right.
No, but it's for my viewing pleasure. Thank you.
Right. And I'm like, and you're in my house. So, but you know what? There are moments like that. And
Yep.
I was like, you know what? You're
Yep.
right. You're right.
You're
You're
right.
right. You guys got
You're
this.
right. Yep.
Jackson's paying y'all to do something. I'm just gonna smile and watch.
And
So
watch. And that's it.
yeah,
And the outcome of that is so rewarding. Because when you want to do this and keep them right here, it's not, you
no,
know,
you're
I
right.
said, and that's when you sit there and I said, why did God give us free will? Free will to what? Mess up or do right. And I said,
Yep.
it is for us to figure it out. So I was
Yes.
like, nope. And I was, like I said, I was looking at those labels, thinking to myself, man, they would look so much neater if this. And when I ordered them and I said I envisioned them looking like this, and I said, Claudia, just step back.
This is
You are
her
not
thing.
Emma and Co.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and you know what? As a mom, it's hard to do.
Yep.
As a mom, it's hard to do because we want everything perfect and great for our children. But
Yep.
it's like Caesar tells me all the time, we have to let them fall. We
Yep.
have to let them fall. We have to let them fail
Yep.
so that they know to get back up and keep going after it. So
Yep.
yes, I know, believe me, I am that mom that wants to do for everybody and do everybody's stuff and make it perfect. And I've learned little by little that okay, all right, you're right. I'm gonna step back. So
And let her creativity come
yeah,
through.
that's
Not
right. They've
mine.
got to
It's
be them.
hers.
That's right. That's right. I agree. So I know that you and I have a lot in common personally.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is kind of a deeper subject and I like it because I haven't had a guest yet on the podcast that I've got into more personal stuff with. It's always been not surface level stuff, but it's always been about the industry, about women, right? And how we can make change and all that is important. I'm not saying it's not, but I also think our stories are important because
Yep.
it's interesting how they align a lot. They align. And my friend yesterday told me, Marissa, the universe brings people together on
Come together.
purpose.
Yep.
And I'm like, man, you're right. Okay. And I started thinking about our conversation, and it was so touching to me. It brought up a lot of emotion, a lot of memories. But let's get started with the positive stuff because you have a very interesting background, right? Where your parents are from, where you were brought up, your father's pastry shop.
Yeah.
Talk to us about all that. Tell us some of that stuff that you shared with me.
So my daddy was, like I said, he was born in Italy. He was born at the not at the butt end of World War One and then the beginning of World War Two. So I think what could have been something that would have been horrific and turned his demeanor or his outlook in life towards the negative.
Right.
Um, I'm going to say that God protected that and turned everything into a
Hmm.
positive where he said, life is too short. You've got to live it and you've got to live it to the fullest. And that
Right.
doesn't mean go out there and do reckless. That doesn't mean go out there and do illegal or go out there and
Right.
do drugs or whatever. He goes,
Right.
I'm talking about life is a gift.
Yeah.
He goes, live it.
Mm.
Life, the gift is the present. And that's what
Right.
he was saying. And it's not the box, it's the
Right.
present.
It's the
He
present.
goes, every day, every second, every hour. He goes, everything is a gift. My mom, like I said, she's more rigid, stringent, and she is 24 years younger than my dad. I was like, I promise you, you two are polar opposite, even in age. And I said, he's the young one, you're the old one, lady. But he growing up in Italy, his best friend's dad was a pastry chef. He owned the local bakery, and my dad was interested. Now, his best friend, who was, the son of the pastry chef,
Right.
had no interest in the business. So, the dad was very happy and pleased to see that somebody was interested in the
Interested.
trade and sent
Yeah.
my dad to Switzerland to become a pastry chef. So he
Wow.
carried that from um, from Italy to South America, Venezuela,
Uh-huh.
which was as much as I love Tennessee, I think Venezuela was my dad's Tennessee. He fell in love. He loved everything about it, the culture, the place, everything. Heartbroken when I remember being little, like 2, 3 years old, and he was making the decision of me going to school, whether I wanted to go to an Italian school or an
Mhm.
American school, so
Right.
that we can make that transition when it would happen, because he was seeing the decline of what was happening in Venezuela. So he
Right.
knew that eventually it was not going to be in the best interest to stay.
Just right.
Um, so and it was heartbreaking for him because he loved it. My mom couldn't wait to leave it behind. So, and and he flourished like he did, even though he was a pastry chef, he was so open to life, to experiences. He had a best friend who was in he was a contractor,
Hmm.
um, a friend that was a realtor. So, he would buy property and the guy would design the houses and build them and the realtor would sell them. So in some aspects, even what we're doing today was something that I learned as a kid.
Right.
But through experiences, my dad was never shy. He's like, hey, everyone puts, pants on, one leg at a time.
Like, yep.
Everyone, and his favorite one, which is, you decide if you want this on there or not. But he goes, everyone poops.
Yeah. I mean,
He
it's
goes,
the
so it doesn't matter. He goes, and he taught me, I remember I was 18 years of age. I was going through college and learning book work of how to, establish a business and the differences of, corporate law and all this other stuff, but having hands-on doing what we were doing for, the restaurant and the bakery and the wholesale and all that
right.
other stuff. So I was like, man, it's amazing how book and real life are not the
Go.
same.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and I said, so it was a great experience, but there was a contract at Disney And there was a contract for Darden Foods, which was here locally, Olive Garden, and it had a couple of other restaurants under the umbrella. I was 18 years old, and he's like, you're going to walk in there and you're going to show them whatever it is what is it that you're bringing to the table? He
Uh-huh.
goes, bringing something different. You're bringing an opportunity. You're bringing this. They can say no. That is their right. He goes,
Right.
but you walk in there with that head held high, and
Mhm.
you are not going to be intimidated by absolutely no one ever. Well, guess who got the contract for Darden Foods
Oh
for
my
Guess who
God.
got the contract for Disney? It was the most horrific contract
Wow.
ever, but it was, it was a year's worth of hard work and they controlled everything. And then after that, there was a local place in Orlando downtown. It was Church Street Station. We got all their restaurants. So,
Wow.
so selling came easy when
Yes.
you believe in a when you believe in something, it's easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you feel, have you ever seen the meme where it's the little kitten, but there's a lion behind?
Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
and I said, and that's I said it's that feeling of, hey, it doesn't matter because I know who's behind me.
Right.
And he always raised me. He goes, it doesn't matter. And I think that's why I don't even feel sometimes the difference of a male domination or just female or whatnot, because he was
That
like,
could be very true. Yeah.
he's like, it is what it is.
That's right.
Because you
That's
do what
right.
you do. And so, but it was a fun experience, the many years that we did with the food and the in the industry and going to restaurants and meeting great people and serving great people and then having our own uh, coffee shop. So it was fun. It's something that is always in the back of my heart to do. But being Italian, I don't know if I would have the patience for today's clientele.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do not blame you at all. So, would you say that your father has been your biggest role model?
Yep.
Yeah.
And my mom too. My mom showed me what not to do,
Yeah.
who not to be. And I know that that sounds harsh, but it is, and my mom labels,
Yeah.
when I was questioning labels, I was like, oh, don't be your mother who's always like, this is what you've got to do and you cannot deviate from this. I
Yeah.
said, you do you. That's what my dad would have said. My
Right.
dad would have
Right.
said, even if it was cockeyed and ugly, it is the most amazing thing I've ever seen because you did it.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
did it without being asked. So I was like, be your daddy. Don't be your
Yeah.
mom.
Be your daddy. Yeah, I would agree with you. I know that you and I are both only children,
Yep,
which is very special.
it is. We're
It
well
is,
loved.
yes, we're both loved, and we are both daddy's girls.
Yes.
My dad has passed away also, and it was the hardest experience I've ever had.
Yep.
We discussed this, and I told you, you being a woman of faith, um, I lost my faith when my dad passed away. I
I did too.
refused to go to church. I was angry with God.
Yep.
Um, my dad was such a good person, and I mean, he would give you whatever, even if it meant he was going to be without, he would give it to you.
Yep.
At Christmas time, he would make sure that everybody had something. He would bring Santa Claus to the house, the whole, all our extended family. He has a big family, my mom's family, everybody would get to come see Santa. There was always gifts for everybody, big or small, it didn't matter. You were going to get something and he would make sure of it. We also, what's funny is we had a catering business.
Yeah.
And yeah, and my dad would cook all the time and cook for everybody.
Yep.
And it didn't matter whatever occasion you knew that he was going to bring you brisket, fajitas, sausage, I mean, wings, whatever you wanted. I mean, it was going to be there, right?
Yep.
And we would go and we do these catering. these weddings and stuff, and it'd be all of us working and serving food. And yeah, my mom wasn't a fan of doing all that, but everybody was there and we were banging pans and helping, and she was cleaning kitchen, and it was just, they are some of the best memories that I have, right? Doing that stuff with my dad.
They are.
And I believe that it led me, those kind of things led me to be the person that I am, right? I watched him and my mom work very hard all their life. I mean, my mom is in her 70s and she still works part-time, which you met her when we got to go
Yes,
there.
yes.
And she still works. She doesn't want to stop. And that's her second career because she had a full-time career. My
Yeah.
father was in the military in the Air Force, and he retired and went into real estate. And then my mom retired from USA to take care of Jackson. And then she, works part-time at Chico's. And, I believe that they are amazing role models to me when it
Yep.
comes to work and, how to get things done. The one thing that I do envy that, they've known each other since middle school.
Right? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And it's only been them. There was
Yeah.
nobody else, and that's just, that is amazing. That
And
is amazing.
that is exactly what I envy too. My mom was 16. So my daddy owned the company that she ended up working for, and that's
Okay.
how she met my dad. And I tease her relentlessly. I'm like, oh, so you were like eyes on the owner. I said, wow. I said, gold digger much? And then she's like, stop. I said, that's not what had happened. And I said, sure, you can
Yeah,
tell yourself
sure.
whatever you want to say. And I said, and my daddy was good looking. I said, I guess we cannot blame you on that either. And she's,
Uh-huh.
and then as all Italian or typical Latin Americans, the whole full name comes out rolling out of their tongue. Do not sit there and make
Uh,
lies about what happened. But,
yeah,
and it was, and to watch them, what I got to see, what I remember, and they always worked and they always worked together, and it was always, their own business.
right.
Um, so I've seen the struggles, I've seen the hard moments, I've seen the successful moments. So I understand why she had to be the totalitarian at times, because my dad was like your dad. You need it. If I've got it, you've got it. And my mom sometimes is like, hold on now, because we might need it too. So,
Yeah.
and that was something that, but it was them. My mom has known nobody else but my dad
Yeah.
from the moment that she met him till he passed away. And
Mhm.
when you have, you know, I, my ex and I, we got married. I was 23 years old. So I went from my parents' home to our home. We bought
Right.
a
Right.
townhomes, and we built our life, and we built 20 years of it. And when you suffer the devastation of a divorce, then you sit there and go like, you know, Ronnie is a wonderful man, and we are 7 years in, but it's like there's so much history. Like if I want to talk about my dad,
Yeah.
he's hearing it from a foreign side of it. And then
Right.
I look back and I'm like, oh, I wish I had what my mom did,
Yeah.
that I could go back. And I do. Kenneth and I were still pretty good friends.
Yeah.
We've managed to remain, as close as we can. And he'll say, I call him, I'm like, remember this, and remember when dad did this? Oh yeah, I remember. And then he used to call my dad Papa, or the Godfather.
I love it.
So, so it's, and those are the things that, and sometimes it's that rub, like the new wife, she's like, oh, and Papa, the kids call him Papa. And I said, you don't even know why it's Papa. And I said, because my Justin, he is Justin Gaetano. So he's named after my daddy. Gaetano,
Okay.
daddy's name. So, Kenneth was like, oh, we got a little Papa. So he started calling him Papa, which in turn made Justin call, Daddy Papa. And
Uh-huh.
I said, so Amanda, our oldest, she's always, Daddy, 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 Daddy. And then Justin and Emma are Papa, 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 Papa. And I said, and it started here because of my dad.
Right.
So, and those are the times when it's like, my mom had not, she lost her best friend, she lost my dad, but there was nothing that they didn't live and have together that
Yeah.
she didn't hold forever.
Right.
While me, I'm still trying to search that balance of, oh, I can't talk to you. Well, I guess I can, but it's not really the right thing to do, and you don't know. And it's like, and that's hard. That's something that hurts my heart a lot.
I know, me too. It bothers me a lot because my dad didn't get to meet our youngest, Sebastian,
Yeah.
and he passed with when our middle one wasn't even a year old. And we named Christian, his name is Christian Horacio after my father.
Yeah.
And so, those moments really bother me, or when I'm somewhere and you see the grandparents and I'm like, and I try not to get mad or angry, but I'm human and I can't help it.
Yep.
I always think like, why? Like, why did it happen this way?
Yep.
My dad was supposed to live until he was in his 90s at least, so he could see my kids and get to know them. Because I know that having three boys and my dad and Caesar, I can only imagine the laughs, the things they would have gotten into, right? And I mean,
Yep.
even with the business, Caesar says, I wish your dad was here because I know he'd be in the thick of it with me,
Yep.
and which makes me laugh because I think if my dad was here, they would have booted me out already. It
Out
would
of
have been
the
my dad and Caesar that would have done everything, and they'd be like, "Yeah, we don't need you. You stay home." Right? I would have missed out on a lot, which is okay because I'd have my dad.
That's
But
it.
there. I feel like, I mean, I can't imagine losing a child, but for me, losing the parent, that has been my greatest pain that I've gone through.
Unexpectedly. And that's a thing, not having that closure, not
Yeah.
having that, if it's something that, okay, you're seeing a decline and it's coming or
Right,
whatever, maybe it would have been a little
right.
bit different, but it wasn't. And it was just you're here, you're gone, and
Yes,
and you're trying to process and you're trying to parent and you're
yeah,
trying to be a wife and you're trying
yes.
to be an employee, but your head is just spinning.
Mhm.
And like I told you, being a chef, he fed millions. And my mom said that one of the very last audible things that he said was that he was thirsty and he was hungry. And
Mhm.
that just absolutely um floored me.
Heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I know. The last thing my dad said was that he loved me.
Yeah.
He told the doctor, "That's my daughter. I love
Yeah.
you." And and it was the same for us. It was, I think I shared this with you. He went in on a Wednesday and he passed away Sunday, Easter morning, and very unexpected. My mom called me and was like, "You need to get over here. They're saying your dad's not going to make it." I'm like, "What do you mean? He was just fine.
He was,
He
yep.
ate Jello last night. Like I fed him Jello and he was watching a baseball game." Two of my elementary friends had come. They're dear friends of mine. They came and they visited with my dad, and everything was fine. What do you mean? Like, and there was just no processing because then it kicks in now, not so much survival mode, but now what do I have to do now to help
Well,
my
yeah.
mom? What's going to happen now?
Hmm.
What void do we have to fill now to make sure that everything's taken care of? His funeral, his this, that. It just went in. There's like no time to grieve,
Yep.
right? And I can think of probably the first time, it was months later. I was in the shower and I was home alone. I was just screaming,
Mhm.
crying, screaming, like it finally, like just like everything, just I was done. I was tired, and I just I
Been
feel
there,
like it
done
just
that,
happened
sister.
yesterday. Yeah,
It
I
is
know.
hard. And that's one of the things that my Ronnie, my husband, he just turned 60. His daddy's 91. And I
Wow.
promise you, there are times I hold his hand and it feels like my dad's hand. And I'm just sitting there holding his hand and I'll put my hand right there and just think,
Oh.
oh, it's my daddy. And then I look at my husband and I want to punch him in the face. I'm like, how do you have your daddy and I don't?
Oh, I
You
know,
know,
I know.
and I do, and I'm like, ooh, I said, Claudia, don't let that come back into your heart. And I said,
Yeah,
you fought hard
that's
to get
right.
rid of that anger and that. frustration and that
Yes.
why that, and as Ronnie said, he goes, we're human. He goes, that was nothing to feel bad about or upset about. He goes, you had to grieve and
Yeah.
God understands. And I said, and I know, but I said, I let him down in the process. And I said, but at
Right.
that point, I didn't care. I said, like I told you before, I said, I became a true butthole.
Yeah.
And that was not honoring my dad
Right.
or God.
I agree.
So,
I
and that
agree.
is, but don't think that I don't every once in a while when, we go visit Pops and I'm sitting there holding his hand and I'm thinking, I promise you, when we get out of here, I'm gonna punch her in the face. He's mine now, not yours. No.
Yeah, I know. I know it's difficult. It's difficult. I know. So, okay, so we're gonna start wrapping stuff up here, but I know that you shared with me. Tell us about the photos that you have in your office and why you have them in there.
They are my constant reminder of what I do, who's watching me, who is behind me, who built me, and what everything is about. Every gift that God has given me. I've got my daddy, I've got Justin from birth to when he turned 13, that crushed me. Um, I didn't feel it so much with Amanda because I was pregnant with Emma, I think, or just giving birth to Emma. So her teenage years, I was just sleep deprived with a
Right,
2 year
right.
old and a baby. So, but when Justin turned 13, oh by golly, I was in his bed holding him, cuddling him,
Oh,
and just tears rolling down my face, going like
yeah.
no. And their dad, he's like, you crying yet? I'm like, shush your face. And I said, so, and yep, I've got, the kids, I've got in various stages of life, definitely my dad. And like we said, we realized we don't have a picture of mom, but, and then of course the three little rugrats, the little puppies. So, and not just that, because even in that, I've got pictures of work, like when we're up in Louisville and it is not my family, but it is a family and
Yes,
it's part of us. I mean,
yeah,
so I've got everyone to keep me in mind. Hey, you know, somebody tells me that I'm inefficient. I know the truth.
that's right.
Don't, keep, unfocus from God and look ahead because look who's looking
That's
and
right.
look who's starting Emma and go and,
That's right. That's
and
right. I'm so proud of her. She needs to send me the link or whatever. I want to order a candle from her. I love that she's even doing that. That's amazing. Tell her, please.
we will. I told her, I said, we're gonna have to work through, like through just on my, well, I know, I told her, I said, it doesn't even have to go through mine. I said, she's got her Facebook page and I said,
Yeah.
and, show her how to do her own thing.
Yeah.
But we did a video where she was explaining, the process and this is how she picks things and why she does and,
Oh,
the scents when
awesome.
she mixes them or if they are more towards like we have lavender, we have rosemary, we have lemongrass at the house. So she's researched how rosemary, it's a focus that
Oh,
changes
okay.
your thinking, like, it refocuses. So she
Right.
goes, and so she's got that with a printed out what it does to your brain and a sprig
Wow.
of that with the candle. So the lemongrass, how it cleanses, of course, the lavender for just relaxation.
Relax. Uh-huh.
So, and so she's done the fun things like she called something like the Pretty Princess, whatever candle, and it's pink and it's got sparkles, and then she's got something that has, a benefit to it. So she's really put a lot of thought into this.
Well, make sure that you share that video so we can all watch it and share it and
Yes,
support her because that's
yes,
amazing.
ma'am.
That's
Yes,
really
ma'am.
amazing. All right, Claudia, is there anything else you want to share your favorite mantra, um, that help, a favorite quote, anything that you want to leave us with?
The one thing that I leave everyone with is posted behind me. It's Romans 8:28. And that is, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. And that is
Amen.
it. It doesn't matter what we do, how bad we mess up, how bad, how great. It all works out. And like you said, God brings people together. I said, it'd be amazing to, I always think of a cross stitch, how pretty it looks on the front, but if you flip it, and that's what God does. He keeps all that and you make all these connections and you make something beautiful out of
Yes.
everything.
Yes. You're right. I love it.
So
I love
that,
it.
that's it.
Well, I love it. And thank you so much for taking the time to be on here and for sharing your story,
Yes, ma'am.
for
Thank
sharing your
you.
journey. It's a beautiful journey. I appreciate you. I'm so blessed to have met you. We will be there
Likewise,
in a couple of
in a
days
couple of
there.
weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, couple in a week, right?
in a week. Yeah, we'll be
Yeah.
over there. So
Yes.
if we get the chance, hopefully we can stop by and just say hi again and see you and give you a
Yes,
hug
ma'am. Look
and
forward to it.
yes, thank you. Thank you. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day, and we
Yes,
will see you
ma'am.
soon.
All right.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
Claudia.